Hi, this is Clarence Moye with the Contending, here again with Deborah Kampmeier, director of the Gilded Age. This time we're here to talk about episode 5, A Different World. Welcome, Deborah. It's great to talk to you again.
Thank you. It's so fun to be back.
So this is a very different world. A lot has happened since the last time you and I spoke for episode 2. We've seen, the drama of Gladys getting married. We didn't know if she was going to make it. She gets married. Now she's been shuttled off to the UK, where she is to live her life as a duchess in what I'll call Downton Abbey. I don't remember the name of their house, but it's definitely
Right.
a world that is familiar to Sir Julian Fellows, who
Yeah.
obviously wrote both series. But visually, I'm very interested in, as the episode begins, we have the shot of the carriage going over the bridge. It's reflected in the water, but everything is very blue, very gray, very dark. I'm just very interested in how you and the team approach setting up these different locales and different visuals for a very different country.
Yeah, thank you. That you always notice these choices, Clarence. It's such a pleasure. Yeah, so it starts with that upside down carriage in the reflection, and just that feeling that her whole world has turned upside down, right? And
Mhm.
then um, you know, the gray that you speak to is very intentional. My DP, Chris Levasseur, and I had really talked about wanting to capture the gray of England, and to really keep those cool colors, and to reflect not just a different like landscape, but also and light coming through the windows, but also to reflect Gladys's inner life as well.
Mhm.
And when she walks into that castle, to feel the difference in scale, right? Like she is coming from a great, huge, big, epic home, but this is even bigger. And we wanted to really create this feeling of her isolation and her loneliness and how cold and bleak it feels to her to be in this
Mhm.
castle, right? And I don't know if you know, but we were shooting all of this we used three different locations for our interiors,
Mhm.
and two of them are in estates in Newport and one's in Long Island. So we were really having to like create really as fully as possible that feeling that we're in a different country. So the difference in light, the tonality was really a choice that Chris made that I thought was brilliant. And we also, the exterior was our visual effects supervisor Douglas went over and we shot some plates of the countryside in England.
Mhm.
um and so that pond is an actual location, but the carriage wasn't there, so that was put in post, right? So we had three interior locations and we had an exterior location, then we had visual effects working with us. And certainly that opening shot, once we come up to sort of the entrance and we have all of the townspeople flooding in and
Mhm.
coming into the carriage. All of that was in Newport. And we were on a crane. We brought our background in and we lifted up and over this long row of trees. But the estate that we used, Douglas built onto and expanded. And so it was a full visual effect. He also made the entrance to the estate like three times as long. So it was a real collaboration between many departments, to create that experience of a different country. I mean, our location manager, Laurie Pickus, is amazing, and she would take us into these amazing places. And then Bob, as you always speak to, is like making them, so actualized and correct. And so it was a real collaboration between many departments to create England.
It feels as if we've been in this carriage for days. Are we nearly there? What do you mean? We are there.
This is Sid Castle.
This is the park of the castle. We've been crossing the estate for the past half hour.
Who are these people?
They're my tenants and farm workers welcoming home their new duchess. Thank you.
I have to get to Newport. I've seen the show. I know so much of it was filmed in Newport. I have never been. I really I have to get there.
Oh, you have to treat yourself. It's unbelievable. You walk into these estates, these mansions, you go inside. And I remember when I was scouting season 2, my first time there, and it was like I entered these spaces and I felt like it was in Europe. And
Mhm.
just the scale, the grandeur of them, the beauty of them, and to walk into them, they're a character. They really are a character in this show, and you should. It's a treat. Now they do
Absolutely.
Gilded Age tours, apparently.
I have heard of that. Yes, it's just I haven't gotten up there yet. One of the things I found the most interesting was how, in the script and you visualizing it, that you're underscoring the Duke's financial status by a quick shot of the period rat trap, the mouse trap,
Right.
essentially. And so, now you start to understand, there was reference to the fact that he was running out of money to sustain this estate, and anybody who watched Downton Abbey knows that was a constant struggle from that
Right.
family with Highclere Castle. But just that very quick moment where they said, "Oh, you don't have rats or you don't have mice." Excuse me, they would never say rats. You don't have mice in New York. Well, no, they don't. They have these brand new houses that are so
Right,
magically
exactly.
lit. Everything is white, and this is wood paneling and very dark. I mean, it's all these stark contrasts underscored with his financial condition.
Right, because he sold everything. I mean, he had to marry Gladys to save, his fortune or his castle and his status. And so, that was very much a part of the design as well, was
Mhm.
how much do we clear out? It says in the script that I think a later episode than we're discussing, but that, he has like sold everything except the paintings, the
Mm.
family paintings on the wall, and so we're also looking at less staff, right?
Right.
And no fires in the fireplaces, or if there are, small ones instead of big ones, no big bouquets, arrangements of flowers. It was very um minimalist, if you will, the world as well.
So I want to jump ahead a couple of scenes. We'll come back to some other things that happen in between, but in Gladys's journey, she hosts or attends her first dinner party. And I have
Mhm.
to, obviously there's some costuming choices or some wardrobe just choices that didn't accord with the Duke's sister's preferences, but I have to wonder, I know there's very specific customs and rules that the team follows when they're establishing these dinner sequences. I have to imagine that the rules that you followed for this scene is different than what you've directed previously for the New York set dinner sequences.
Absolutely. And I have an incredible team around me, like making sure I get it right. Lou Carlin is one of my producers who's deep in the research and knows all the etiquette. And I always have him standing by my side. And I'm like, Luke, is this right? So yeah, it was different. But interestingly, it was also, harking back to what we just spoke to, there was not a servant for every chair. So it's not the same as it is like at the Russells, where the chairs come out at the same time.
Mhm.
Um, there's certainly a difference because of the money that has gone out. Gladys has just brought it in, but it's not yet, you know, building back up. But I do think for me, what was really different was how we were focused on Gladys
Mhm.
and how lost she is in this, right? The humor she's lost to. She's lost to the traditions. She's lost to, you know, Lady Sarah's like totally, taking over and standing before she does, and all those things that she's sort of lost. She doesn't really know this world yet. And so it was, in a way, yes, the etiquette was different, but even more so, it was really focusing on how she's lost in the difference than what it is at home.
And then she has to endure that pain. I don't remember the exact joke, but she has to endure that painful joke about they mistook someone for the valet. And it was,
right.
I felt so bad for her in that moment. I mean, she's just you underscore the fact that she is just a child at this in this environment where she's been thrown in over her head, and it's painful to watch. Moving back a little bit, back to, I think it's the second scene of the episode, you get to direct an outdoor sequence, a sport sequence, where traditionally we've seen tennis, but here we've got baseball, and more importantly, we've got Black Americans playing baseball in a way that, another underscore of history and the importance of that game to that culture. What challenges did that sequence bring to you?
Yeah, I loved that. We got to really show this. Again, I think historical storyline of Black America that really people don't know that much about. And again, Sonia Warfield and Erica Dunbar had put this scene together in such a accurate, historically correct way. And we actually had what was his name? James Brunson is a historian who specializes in Black baseball in exactly like a 5-year time period that landed right where we were living with this scene. And he was on set, he advised us. And so, it was incredible to have these eyes on this scene to make sure it was right. What was really interesting and challenging was the physicality, really. There were a lot of written references, and there were also drawings of this world, and it was a real thing that was occurring, this Black baseball league and these games. And we based ours on a very famous game that took place between two teams in New York. And what was really important was how do we like get the move? They ran different. They caught different. They passed, they threw the ball in a different style. And so it was really, we were calling upon New York based baseball players who were actors and bringing them in and having to train them in don't run like that, run like this. And so it was really trying to keep consistent with the accuracy of how this game would have been played. That was really, that was, I think, the big challenge. Also, it was a really big scene to do in, a day. And so it was just, we had 3 cameras. It was very, very fast, our day. We moved quick, we got it done. And it was just a real blast to get to recreate that in so much detail. And, like I said, I'm just grateful to my team who made sure I was doing it right,
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a fun scene. Of course, it leads. And I love when this show particularly mirrors, small moments of history that you don't realize. It's not like you're getting a lesson. You are getting a lesson, but it's very subtly handled because it's in the midst of the drama. But all of a sudden, it's the scene that's set, as you say, in this historic baseball game, which is part of the fun of the show, I think.
Go, Wilbur! Show what you've got!
Oh, that's your friend on third base?
Technically, he's my accountant and also a friend.
Baseball is more intense than I thought.
All these years, your father's store sponsored this team, but you've never come to a game.
I suppose if I'd been a boy, he would have brought me, but I'm not.
No, you are quite the lady.
So going back to George Russell's office last time we talked about his meeting with J.P. Morgan. Now he's meeting with his son Larry, who is he's going to send off to Arizona to help him with that land deal. Through this fantastic dialogue, Larry pushes back on his father a little bit and says, what's in it for me? Maybe I don't want to go. Maybe I don't want to do your bidding. Maybe I want to be my own person. I'm going to propose to Marion. And then George stops and says, it's, paraphrasing here, but it surprises me how much you remind, when I catch myself in you. What do you think those two characters, what do you think is most similar between them as father and son?
Yeah, I love that moment when George says that. It's so tender how Morgan plays it. I love it. But I think there's their personalities are quite different, but I think there is this ambition and they're always looking for the next opportunity, right? And so Larry like betting on Jack with his own money and making a lot of money from it, right? And then his desire when he says, okay, I'll do this, but I want to see, I want to see if there's actually some copper in these mines. George just wants the land, but Larry is looking for opportunity just like George. And so I think there is this business acumen they both have. But I also think they both follow their passion, right? They both actually married for love. And I think that's a similarity as well that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, talking about Larry and Jack and the clock, I mean, we find out last episode that the deal goes through. He makes, they each make $300,000, which is probably $5 million at that point in modern currency. Yeah. It's a lot of money. Yeah. I was just, and this recurs throughout your episode here in episode 5, where the Van Ryn household starts to find out about the money. And, Agnes, she comes and says, I need to know how much he made because I need to know someone living in my house, how much money they have. It's
right.
Was there historic precedence for someone in service becoming wealthy like that?
There isn't like a literal story of a servant who made this particular clock, but there is historically a guy named, I think, Fasolt, I think was his name. I know this again from Luke told me this. He does these deep dives. So there was this man who created this clock, and that's accurate to history. However, the Jack sort of storyline is a combination of a lot of these rags to riches stories, right? It really is. It happened quite a bit. Even Carnegie, right, came as a very, poor Scottish immigrant and then became quite, quickly overnight in a way, one of those overnight successes, one of the wealthiest men in America, right? And so this is a story that I think is really like of the time, of the Gilded Age, but also, really the American dream, right? Like it did happen. And so it's a collection of a lot of different stories that were drawn from rather than one particular person, though the clock itself and that invention was this one guy. Fasolt, I think is his name.
Audiences are going to be treated to a really nice story with Jack for the rest of the season, but I'm not ready to leave Larry yet because I have to talk to you about the proposal sequence because number one, what does it feel like to be able to bring that moment in your episode that fans have been wanting for so many seasons, ever since they kind of had that initial chemistry within the first season? What is it like to direct that scene?
Are you kidding? I'm just like, really I get to do that? That's amazing. Yeah, it was so romantic, right? And it was so, I thought those actors just brought it. They knew what was being asked of them. And like, when, Louisa says yes, and she's like weeping, and I'm like at the monitor weeping, it was just like so romantic, and we really played a lot in terms of the visual of that scene. I wanted it to be very dreamy and very magical and very romantic. And so you might not notice unless you know, but I ended up having my grips build a turntable, 360-degree rotating turntable, and I put both actors and the camera on it on a long lens so the background's a little out of focus, so that when the proposal's happening and they're moving, you're getting, it was slow enough that I think it's subtle enough that it's not like in your face, or that's my hope anyway, but you get this magical feel of this moment, because it needs to feel like, if it needs to feel heightened, like you said, we've been waiting for this moment for seasons, right? So it really needs to really sort of lift up and feel quite heightened and magical. And so when we were scouting, our schedule was such that we had to shoot it on the day that we were at the Lyndhurst Mansion, which in episode 2, we were shooting that big party scene at Aurora Fanes. And so we were looking at they have this beautiful property. And so we were wandering around looking like, where are we going to put it in the park? And I saw this tree, and it's so like my inner life, like that tree speaks to my imagination. And I just sort of darted off from the group, and I broke in under it's a willow, right? And I broke in through, and I was like, and I was like spinning like, the character does. And I was like, this is it. This is the place. And I darted back out and called everyone over. And I'm like, we have to do it here. It feels so, it just had that secret garden feel, right? And that magic. And so, once I found it, I wanted to see if I couldn't, like, that experience I had of going into it felt like what I wanted Marion to feel when she goes in. It's like this special place, but she has no idea what's about to come in this special place. So she's already sort of lifted from the experience of the space. And then, she's looking and circling, and then it brings us into the circling, that we get to do during this romantic proposal.
I love the spinning. I love the shot of, Marion looking up at the, as you said, the ceiling or the roof of this willow enclosure, and then the camera subtly spins around and around. I was going to ask how you did that, but they're on a platform. It gives you this kind of breathless feel that you're dizzying out of excitement, and you can't, just almost can't catch your breath because you don't, it works so well.
That's right. Thank you so much. And it was it was such a team effort. My incredible grip, Chris Scutch, built that. They had to build it inside they built that for me, and they were so generous in their enthusiasm to do so.
Now, the subsequent scenes, as a viewer, I felt a little bit of a letdown, not because of anything that's, it is portrayed as written, but Larry, has proposed to her, and now he says, okay, now I'm off to dinner, and we're not going to do anything else for the rest of the day. Like, how did you react to that? I mean, obviously that's very adept to the period, but you have to watch this through modern eyes and be like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be celebrating, not running off with the guys. Right.
Well, in Larry's defense, I think he had this plan with Jack, and I think it's like the fun of like taking Jack out into the world and like showing Jack what his life is going to be. I think it had been planned, and it was something where, it is his friend's bachelor party, and so it was something in the works, just like, he had been planning to ask Marion, to marry him, and suddenly Dad is, saying, you got to go to Arizona tomorrow. And so I just the like unfolding of everything. I see Larry as innocent in this moment.
Yeah, that's true. Well, he does whisk Jack off to what we come to know as the Haymarket, where is
Right.
a gentleman's club, and a very different gentleman's club, I think, than anybody would expect coming from this show. I mean, it's, you know, women boxing. There's men dressed as women. There's, you know, women all around looking for drinks, and it's a totally different world, and it fits well within this episode. But I love how you bring us into that moment through Jack's perspective, through Jack's eyes, because he is the wild-eyed virgin in this moment.
Totally. And I love like playing it through his eyes, because I think also for us, it's like, whoa, what is this world? And I think we really researched this one as well. It was so fun. Like they're incredible, like, descriptions of this club. There are actual like drawings of women boxers, and we were able to take those to Kasha, our costume designer, and she like made costumes that were just like exactly these drawings from the period. And like all of this is totally you know, researched, and you know, so much information that we drew upon for this world. And again, I'm sorry, I keep harking on Bob Shaw, but wow, we went, what's like, I don't know, like a performance art like space that we found that was all white walls. It was like filthy. Wow. He like went so far beyond like my wildest dreams for what he created in his space. It was
so much
amazing.
red velvet. So much red velvet.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. And you know, just to be able to come into that world and bring Jack through that world, and you know, the discovery of Maud and all those pieces were so fun to get to play with. And you know, and PRA, my Steadicam operator, he was incredible, because we were doing a lot of that sort of and Chris also to light it so that we could do oneers through, you know, we did the Steadicam as a like follow and a lead, and looking at the place, and like really like staying in the world, and you know, going through the whole space to introduce our audience to this world. It was really fun.
One of the closing scenes of the episode, you go back to Newport, you go to Mamie Fish's gathering, the social gathering. I don't remember exactly what it was for. It was in honor of Bertha somehow, because Mamie's terrified that Bertha's going to leave at one point. But it reintroduces this theme of that is prevalent within the Gilded Age literature, which is social cruelty of people who are outside of the norm of society, in particular women against women. Being a female director, what does that scene, you know, how did that scene set with you? How did it feel to direct that moment with women being so cruel to Aurora Fane because she, you know, her husband decided to divorce her?
Right. Isn't it? It's just, we see it all the time in every period, and it'll be different groups and different individuals. You know, I think of a kid that goes and sits down at the lunchroom table, and the whole, you know, class gets up and walks away. Like that feeling of being an outsider, like not of your choice, right? Like it's just, it is so cruel what Aurora's having to endure, and not, you know, from any fault of her own, and that she would be the one who's cut out of society because she's a woman, and the man gets to go run free and play. You know, it's really. But I also think in this, I do think we do have this, you know, we keep bringing back the old money and the new money, right? And the old ideas and the new ideas. And I just love that Bertha's there bringing in the new world still, you know, not just the money of it, but the ideology of it, right? And that Marian's there by Aurora's side, and that Bertha's willing to like stand up and say, no, this isn't how we're going to do it anymore, right? And even the scene with Mrs. Fish and Mrs. Astor at the end, where you know, Mamie's like, you know, what are you doing? You can't like throw Aurora out of society if you're not going to do the same with your daughter, right?
Right.
Like, are you prepared really to like banish your daughter? Because that's what you're going to have to do if you choose to do this to Aurora. So there is this shift you start to see, you know, you see the people who are trapped, the young women sitting on the couch who get up and leave when Aurora sits down and are still like really stuck in the societal sort of, you know, old ways. And then you have Marion and Bertha really pushing in, which I think, and Mrs. Fish, right? I think to feel that tension and the possibility for change is part of what feels important to me in that moment.
Yeah, it's the character of Maybe Fish is such a key component of representing the change that's going on, because Mamie Fish in season 1 would never have called out the hypocrisy to
Never.
Mrs.
No.
Astor. But now
Yeah.
she feels she's not doing it publicly. She does do it,
Yeah.
as a one-on-one, but she, that is shocking. I think,
Yeah.
if you consider the period and you've considered the attitudes of the moment, it is shocking that she ultimately does call her out and say, you can't be a hypocrite.
That's right.
To close, last question, I have to applaud you because you have brought back a visual motif that you established in episode 2, where remember when we last talked, we talked about the power component of the man on the staircase and the woman at the bottom of the staircase. And you close the episode. All through the episode, the Russells have been fraying, they've been fighting a little bit, George has had some disappointments and he's angry and he's taking some of that out on Bertha, but you close the episode with him at the top of the stairs in the power position and Bertha in a position that she's never been before, subservient to him. I love
Once
that.
you see it, you can't unsee it, right?
No, it's like, oh, I actually pointed to the screen.
It would have just stayed subliminal and in your unconscious. But I love that you saw that. Yeah.
Yep. It's a great scene. But do you think, I was a little surprised that he does that in front of the staff? There's so many people in that room where he's basically telling her, I'm leaving you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that he would have, had he not experienced that frustration with not being able to buy his way into the Chicago Railway with that prominent family that owns all of that property, do you think that he would have taken that out on Bertha in such a public way? It's almost like he's pouting a little bit. Granted, she did some things, but
she did. I don't know. It's interesting. I think certainly there's enormous stress around his financial situation, but I like to believe it's like his heart is really torn right now. Like he manages his financial stresses over and over and over again. He might get mad, but like I think he's knocked off of his center to such a degree that he would do that publicly because his heart, I think his relationship with his daughter is what is really the thing that's unraveling him, and how he broke that promise and how he can't forgive himself for allowing Bertha to, make him weak, as he says. And I do think it's really the his relationship with his daughter that destabilizes him more than the stress around his finances. That's my thought around it, though. Probably Morgan could give you might give you a different answer.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because he loves his children. I mean, he loves his family. Obviously he loves money and power and agency and all of that too, but he is a family man, which is,
and I think the vulnerability in having a daughter, like I think for a father and a daughter, there's a vulnerability in that relationship, and her heading off across the world, and he can no longer protect her or take care of her, and she's now unhappy and he did the wrong thing for her. I think that is just so charged and tender and vulnerable and scary and all those things that can totally just pull the rug out and disrupt the entire equilibrium and put all of us in the audience on edge about the Russells' relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Audiences are gonna they're just not gonna know.
No.
Anyway, it's been a really great episode, and it's been a great conversation with you today. Thank you so much
fun.
for the time.
Thank you.